Welcome back to the Education Entrepreneur Mentor series. This is a 5-part series that goes over the 5 critical hats that you need to wear or have included in your team's skill set to be successful as an education entrepreneur, teaching online, building an education-based company. Those 5 critical hats are becoming the expert, the entrepreneur, the teacher, the technologist, and the community builder. This is the 5th and final part of the series where we go over becoming the community builder. Enjoy this session and be sure to check out all 5 parts of this series. In this session, let's talk about community building. And this is really, I think, the least understood, hat, if you will, in the space of courses, coaching, and community. Community, I think, is the least understood, has the highest failure rate. Yet, in fact, it's one of the things that's as old as humanity, this idea of community. But I think we've had trouble translating community to the online world. In many ways, it's pretty new to online in terms of building education and really thinking about intentionally design it. But let's start before the product. Let's think about building free communities as a form of marketing. Community-based marketing, in my opinion, is actually one of the strongest forms of marketing. If you can, in fact, use your free community or somebody else's free community to get traction for your ideas, build authority. But first, let's imagine planting a community, like your own community. You're committing to this strategy. I want to build a community that I can leverage for marketing. But community always has more than just being a means to an ends. It's something you really have to commit to. And in terms of planting your community, I think the most important thing is to plant the community where your avatar is predominantly. And sometimes, like if you're an advanced subject matter expert, you may have, quote, graduated to like some other kind of community where the professionals hang out. But it's important to not lose sight of where, your learners are. I noticed this in the early days of Lifter LMS and building community. A lot of the WordPress people and the course creators were really strongly in Facebook. And in technology, we kind of ended up in like these Slack communities and these more geeky, techie communities like Discord and so on. And just remember where your people are. It's part of your avatar research. Where do they hang out, both online communities and person communities? What conferences do they go to? Where are they socially gathering in the real world and on the internet? When I'm helping people with community design, I often have to go back to first principles and explain what social media is from my perspective. I think a lot of people get this wrong. So I like to describe social media as really being 2 words, like there's social and there's media. So media, when it comes to building a social media community, a lot of subject matter experts are like, well, I'm going to post content. Like every Monday in my group, I'm going to post this type of content. I'm going to post links to like my new course launch or do other kinds of marketing content. I wrote a new post. I published a new video. But that's just media. So that's not an online or that's not a social media community. You just have a community that you post media to. And then there's the social part, which I think a lot of people get wrong, where you actually have to be social and your community members need to be social for it to not be a dead community or feel like a pitch fest. So I think of social as conversation. So it could be commenting on somebody else's post. It could be posing a question. and not just like, all right, cool, I posed a question as my post for the day and walk away. If people start commenting, you know, you want to engage and not just be like broadcasting, like this is a conversation, this is social. So building a community is a really big commitment, and it's important to, you know, especially as the leader, to not just do media and not just do social and just like react and stuff, but not post your leadership content, if you will. Consistency is the name of the game with community. I think the best communities, especially in the beginning, it's really a daily commitment. So if you actually get somebody who's excited about joining this group, you know, it's probably best that they hear from you that day from their first post, or when they join, you can send them a private message welcoming them, and then do that every day. In my experience, I built a 10,000 person Facebook group of course creators and web professionals who serve this market. And that was over the course of 10 years. But in the beginning, I was in there every single day. I had a rule that I would have nobody leave a post and not have a comment, no matter what, from me or the community. So I was really committed to every single conversation and being consistent, posting and conversating on a daily basis. And as time goes on, I could scale back a little bit. I had team members get in and help facilitate in the conversations and the content. So I'm not in there every single day like I once was in my free community, but it was a huge commitment that I didn't take lightly.
Yeah, I think some of that I can relate to is, you know, the idea of not just posting in these communities, but also engaging in the social and having replies. And I forget what ratios are good. I know Gary Vaynerchuk has a formula folks should look up. I think it's called like 8 cents or 10 cents. Like you think of it like you're spending pennies, or maybe it's 80 cents or something like that. He's got some kind of math of like, but the basic idea is like, don't just post your own stuff. Like if you're on Facebook or Reddit or Twitter, one of these social medias, like engage with the community, answer questions. It's important to not just answer questions about your own product or stuff you can sell, but like just be helpful in other ways to build trust and karma and affinity, and stuff like that. And I like your point about, you know, looking for your community where they already are rather than trying to build something and bring them in. And I think folks often either want to look for or build like the social network for blank. And there are a few of those that are out there, but for almost every blank, Facebook is the social network for blank. So you're like, what's the social network for car enthusiasts? Facebook, you know, or Instagram owned by Facebook, something like that. So it's kind of like if they're already on Facebook, like meet them where they're at, is really useful. And so I think when you're building your own community, or when I've been building communities in the past, this has been the case, and I think it's true in some that I've seen through our customers and stuff. We see that everything is support. So people are going to use every communication channel for support, including your community that you built for them to talk to each other. They're also going to ask support-like questions of you through that channel. I think we mentioned this in an earlier discussion too. That's like any way they can get a hold of you through like a blog comment or a Twitter DM, or they find your phone number and call you at 2 a.m. Like they're going to try to get a hold of you. And so that's true in these communities as well. And I know that we struggle with that to, you know, not just have our community and discussion forum devolve into like another support forum. And what we do to combat that is we engage and redirect. So we don't try to stop it. It's going to happen. Like it's very natural, and it's not like every once in a while someone's like, I don't want to go through the official. I think I know better and not get faster support here. But usually people are just, I'm here now. I have a question. I ask it. So allow people to ask questions in non-support channels. Don't try to like police that aspect of your community too much. And I think another tip there is to give once you've hit like a certain mass folks in the community, give them a chance to talk about it amongst themselves before you come in as, you know, the kind of know-it-all and say, here's what I think. And And sometimes you're surprised, like they'll answer the question better than you would have. You'll learn new things. Like you don't shut down the community to just make it like a really quick answer, and they feel good, like, you know, communicating amongst themselves. But sometimes it is like a kind of support question that only you can answer, or you happen to be the only one watching. In that case, like if you can give a short answer, like just a link, just one word answer, just one sentence answer, give it and kind of move on. Like, oh, I had a question. Here's the answer. Cool. If it's a more technical issue that like you would want to get on a call and coach them through, or you need to kind of follow up through some other means that you've set up for support, just kindly remind people that like what the proper channel is for that. And we get that, you use these phrases like the best way to get help with that kind of thing is through this official channel. The fastest way is here. And you can use this too, like if you are using that community for kind of support, but people are still asking questions on Facebook or other social media, you know, sprinkle in links, you know, back to your own community or the official community. Like if you're in like a Facebook group that's branded and has other goals, you got to be careful about that. But if it, you know, push people back to your own community that you own. And then kind of like a side note here is to have a code of conduct. This is like a big topic that we could talk about forever too, but it feels related to this, is like having a code of conduct about how folks should use your community, what they should and shouldn't talk about, what kind of behavior will get you kicked out, and enforce it. And it can be tempting to try to have like a very laissez-faire attitude about things. And it's good to not crush the conversation and let it go. But if you let certain bad behaviors, into your community, like it's going to be problematic. And that's another where maybe we can share some examples of our codes of conduct that we use for our communities. And as a personal story, like, so, you know, the reason I'm thinking about this, like what happens, you know, your discussion forum becomes a support forum is like, we went through that. Paid Memberships Pro support was originally like through a BB Press online forum. And then we had the idea, let's start a community forum for the folks to talk about like business issues and other things amongst themselves, and we'll try to stir discussion. And we tried to participate every day. We kind of weren't going where people were, like, so we weren't on Facebook where there already was. We struggled to kind of get the conversation going. We were working on it, but even when it was going well, like 8 out of 10 posts were just, they clicked the wrong button and posted support in the wrong channel. Like it was very clear, like that the support channel is right here and this is for non-support things. And we tried to like enforce it, like, no, move here, go here, go here. And it was just confusing people. And so we ended up shutting down the discussion community, and we waited way too long to start it up again. And we have a version now that's on Slack and going well. And we were motivated because we found like an unofficial forum on Facebook that we weren't even part of that had hundreds of people. And we're like, someone else is running a community, we should run one too. And now, so we, you know, open that discussion forum, and we're doing a lot of the stuff you were talking about, the building community and being in there and spending the time for the whole team and just tackling the support issues, because that's a very common thing that's happening with people who are trying to, you know, build businesses and use tools.
Yeah, I think, you know, having the code of conduct, I just want to mention, like, there's this idea of having a safe space. So the main thing you want to do is protect your people. Like, as a leader of the community, if somebody is, you know, being insensitive or rude or, you know, way outside of your company values in a really negative way, you know, you can kick them out of the community, particularly any community, but the free community, there's just no room for it. I see some folks get a little overly restrictive, like when you join some Facebook groups, as an example, they're often like, you can't promote your own thing, no external links, and it gets a little restrictive. So I try to find the middle path of like, if someone like is helping somebody and says like, by the way, you know, I actually have a business that does this, cool, no big deal. If somebody's trying to answer somebody's question and they drop a link to a resource that's not ours, I'm not policing that. They're not kicking that out. So it's definitely a balance and something you have to learn by feel. And a healthy community is kind of like it's a give and take. So you know you've figured this out well when a solid community member will actually give more than they take. Kind of like how we talk about email marketing. Like, value piece, value piece, value piece, and then maybe you pitch a product. So there's like this overweight to being giving and helpful. Some to think about. And just one more pro tip is that if you have an all-star community member who's doing really well in your community, doesn't work at your company, you can like deputize them and make them a moderator, or, ask them to do more, potentially give them free access to your course, your membership, your software, whatever. Because some people just really shine in communities, both online and offline, and can be a real asset to your company.
It's a good place to recruit from, even for more formal roles. And I think something I'll say about that code of conduct that you touched on was making sure you preserve that open space for people so they can have discussions. And I think you might feel like if you're writing code of conduct, don't think of it as like we're policing certain kinds of conversations just for the sake of it or because we don't like it. If you think there should be a goal for the forum, have like the water cooler random channel where you're talking about, Netflix shows and stuff. Cool. But in the general section, it's like, hey, we're all trying to build businesses here. Hey, we're all trying to launch, courses here. Hey, we're all trying to talk about football here. Like there's a goal for the community. And so if you keep that in mind, and then the second one is like, you want to encourage as much as possible discussion around that goal. That'll guide you over the types of behaviors that draw away from, like if certain kind of, overly aggressive and, political or, different, things that get posted, they discourage people from coming and participating. And so that can guide you as you're not picking like, I like these people, no, I don't like these people. I like this way of talking, I don't like this way of talking. It's like, I have a goal for the community. And if your discussion is pushing the goal forward, that's good. And certain types of discussion that like, steal the air from the room and cause other people to be quiet. It's, you want to handle that.
Well, let's talk about paid communities as like part of the product. Like it's in the pricing, it's a line item on your features. That community is included in your purchase. The big idea here is a concept I call finding the others. So if you've ever, and I guarantee that anytime anybody has had the experience of like, oh, wow, I kind of found my people. For me, I've run in like entrepreneur circles, climbing circles, dog sledding circles, and I like find the others. Like, oh, there's these people that have the same interests and idiosyncrasies as me. And that can be like a huge benefit. And it happens for free in life, but it can also happen by design as part of a course. And often when you find a really good, kind of customer avatar, there's actually like some negative emotion there, like loneliness or nobody understands me, or I'm happy in my family or my friend group, but I have this like weird little obsession or hobby or interest or whatever. And then you find those other people that are like really into drones or starting companies or a certain type of fitness workout or yoga or whatever it is. And there's this like excitement and energy giving experience of finding the others. There's a saying in our industry when you build a great community and it becomes like this real viable business and it's growing over time. People will often say, well, the subject matter expert will say, well, they came for the content, the courses, the coaching, but they stay for the community. We've talked about recurring revenue in another session, and having a functioning community can be a big part of that. So like, how do you do that and kind of create that finding the others experience? You can actually look to the offline world in the communities you participate in, whether it's spiritual or sports or some kind of fitness thing or some kind of food thing. There's often this concept of rituals. A group will have their rituals, like at a sporting event, there's kind of a series of events. If you do religious things, there's like these series of events that happens. So like creating rituals in your community can be very helpful. I was in a community once where I think it was once a month, there was a post in a group about like, what are your top 3 wins? And the community members, the most engaged members would be like, I accomplished 1, 2, 3. Then the other people would do it, and then they would comment on everybody else's thing, and it was a big celebratory thing. Like, that was a really strong ritual. The other thing you can do is, in terms of finding the others, there's going to be like, you're the leader of your program or whatever, but these other leaders are going to emerge in the community, maybe with like subject matter expertise, like some kind of specialty, or they're particularly good and like they've become so obsessed with your content that they kind of know what you would say, and they'll answer kind of on behalf of you, or like, oh, check out his training on this, or, you know, Jason has a concept around not using exclamation points. Here's why you should not use exclamation points too much in your copywriting and stuff like that. And then you can like kind of, as the like community leader, if you know, like there's an untapped resource in your community, a helper, and somebody asks a question, you can be like humble. This is where you're the guide and not the guru, which we talked about in another session, is you can be like, hey, here's a couple of thoughts on that question you just asked, but we actually have this community member, Sally, over here, who really knows this aspect really well, and you tag her and she comes in and helps. So you're kind of like conducting your community sort of like an orchestra. And then the other thing that happens when you build a strong community, it's working and that's great, but one of the challenges that presents as part of the community aspect of your product is, particularly if you have some longtime members, they become power users, and they've like been through all your material, they love it, they're here, they're maybe at the next level of your training or whatever. So you kind of get the graduate students mixed in with the freshman class, and sometimes the new people feel a little overwhelmed, and it actually makes their imposter syndrome worse, because they're like, oh my God, all these folks in here are already so advanced. Am I in the right place? I don't want to look immature or like I don't know what I'm doing and stuff like that. So design around that, have a process for welcoming new members, making sure they feel welcome and seen, and kind of set the expectation, particularly with your advanced users in the community, that like, hey, there's an expectation to like help the new people coming up, kind of like that little brother, little sister kind of thing. And I just want to mention that Jason and I are here as business partners because we met at some paid and free communities, events, pop-up events, and things that happened over the years. So we got to know each other by investing in paid and free communities. So it's amazing. So what happens is when you have a strong paid community, I've seen it in my free and paid communities where members become like, they do business together, potentially all the way up to business partnerships. So communities can be really powerful and, focus on this concept of helping people find the others. And I just want to spotlight a great book on this topic called The Business of Belonging. I forget the author's name, but it's something to check out to, kind of dig deeper into this concept of intentionally designing community.
David Spinks. So the author of The Business of Belonging, How to Make Community Your Competitive Advantage by David Spinks, if that was the book you were thinking about. I'd like to put a pin in a couple things. One, like we met at an in-person event, and we do so much work online. The majority of what we're doing and we're talking about is online communities. And we even stressed how that's amazing because there's, thousands of people for every niche, around the world. But if you can get in person, there's something about, even if it's just with some of those like key people who come up out of your community on a small scale, or you tag along to another conference, let's all meet up at this other thing. Like we kind of did through WordPress events. Meeting in person is just obviously like another level of attachment and, friendship. And, honestly, that happens with folks in your community. And then another point that we talked how like the free community, you can think of it as marketing. It can be used as marketing for products. And then you specify like the paid community as a product. I found that's important. And as we're building up this community that we have now, which is free, but eventually have a paid component, I think about it like we have a bigger team. So there's literally like a marketing team and a product team. And because the marketing folks have communication jobs, and online communities where you're talking feels like a communication activity, the same people who do like marketing and sales are like leading the community. They have this like skill set that transfers, but we have to be careful about that. It's actually like a different, when the community itself is the product, it's a different skill set, and you're like, you don't have to sell anymore. I'm already here. you have to deliver. We potentially should have the same way when we develop other products and, sprints or quarters or, sessions that we plan. What are we going to do? How are we going to improve it? We're going to add features. So having that same mindset of like, we're building the product itself, and will help you kind of, I think, really engage in the community in a constructive way to make it better. What is the goal of the community? How do we make it better? What do we change? And not that, marketing people are great and obviously like they communicate well, but you're not marketing to them. They're already there. So, but, another issue that comes up with these paid communities is like, I don't know, you call it like the chicken and egg situation. And so there's a few tactics to help with that. And what's, I guess like another big idea to think about, the spotlight's a reason why these paid communities are useful. Like, so you could build content that's one-to-one. And so that's kind of like coaching, like we're talking together, or one-to-many. That's like maybe like a paid course and video that they watch and you distribute, or through a newsletter, or you can have this kind of many-to-many interaction with your users where they're talking amongst themselves. And that's also value that they get. So that's kind of the main value. That's one of the values that folks can get out of the community. Maybe it is the main value, like that the people are talking amongst themselves. But that needs a critical mass of people in there talking to make it, and it's the, it's like someone's number, someone's law for like, as the community gets bigger, it gets more valuable. But how do you do that in the beginning when you don't really have anyone in there if you're trying to build something new? So a couple of tactics I've seen work are free trials for paid communities. And so either start up and say, everyone's welcome to come. And at some point you say, hey, we're going to be free for the next 3 months, and then we're going paid. Probably better if you can do it up front as much as possible so people know, and it's like a trial. So perhaps they purchase your course, they do the course, they get dumped into the community in some sense. And you're like, hey, you can hang out here for 3 months, and then it's X dollars per month. And that gives them time and give them some tasks and motivations to like participate in the community, send them on a quest. Rituals. I love you talked about rituals earlier. It's so like such a powerful psychological thing for humans. And so then they kind of get addicted to the community, and it's not a lot of money, or it feels like a good value for them, and they stick around. Another thing I've seen that's pretty cool as a way to get people into a paid community is that you can pay to get in, or there's some way to get in for free, either because you're like a VIP or you seed it with certain people, or like the first 200 are free and then you cut off. One of the more clever things I've seen is Ian Castle, who has a community that talks about small cap stock investing. It's called Micro Cap Club. And I'm not sure if he still does this, but he has it's quite, it's investing at a high level. It's a pretty expensive community to get into. But folks can get in for free if they provide research. So I don't know if he does it anymore, but it's very clever. It was like either pay $1,000 or whatever the price was, or if you give us 5 pages of research on a stock of your choice and we like it, we'll let you in for free. So it's kind of like, oh, like either you're paying to get in or you're volunteering to get in. And you could think of kind of clever variations on that. And I'll just finish like these are some ways to build a paid community kind of from scratch. And like a warning is that I've only seen this a couple of times, and we should get this guy on to talk about it, because it's like, wow, you made this work. But I've rarely seen it work where someone built a paid community for someone else's community. like they have to be part of that community, and also like in a pretty deep way, like already connected so they know everyone, or they're like the ideal avatar. So they just build it for themselves and then makes sense. Usually it's a very extroverted person who can make all the connections and encourage people to join. Sometimes you'll see a community and you're like, that's a cool community and they have money and I could build this for them, or it's kind of adjacent to mine. I'll build it and try to get people to come. And there's something about that. Like it's harder if you're not building it for yourself.
And I know we've been talking a lot about consistency and showing up, but you can test this idea by doing a pop-up community. Just have a one-time event as like a market test. It could be an in-person conference. It could be like a special workshop that involves working together. I remember Jason and I were at an event together called Cabo Press that our friend Chris Lemma put on. And I think I went the second year it happened. And then I went, I believe, 5 more years after that. I enjoyed it so much. It was once a year pop-up mastermind retreat in Cabo, Mexico, with a really interesting format. Like the sessions were in pools. Half the day was scheduled, half wasn't. Some like lunch group seating assignments or whatever were assigned. Other things were free form. It was a really well done community, but it wasn't like something that recurred like every day or anything like that. It was like an annual event, pop-up event for a certain type of customer avatar. And that was just a great experience. And I remember when Chris said that the first time he ran it, he didn't know if anybody would come, and like 10 people came. And then I went on year 2 and like 20 people came. And then on year 3, there were like 60 people. And now he has like a application. He's always done it by application because he really wanted to protect like want to make sure the right people were coming. It wasn't just something that like anybody can come if you pay me. This is for this specific type of person. So he kind of had his screening mechanism. At Lifter LMS one time, I brought in a subject matter expert in instructional design and like creating MVPs, minimum viable products, where they did the workshop. I just kind of held the space, and we were using a software tool called Miro for groups to collaborate together. And we had a couple people we built, platforms for and helped them flesh out their idea as a group over the course of 3 days. That's called a boot camp. And it was a great experience. But it wasn't like we were committing to doing that every month. And you're getting on this treadmill of commitment. So think about, you can test community in the same ways as you can kind of pre-sell and test other things without the recurring commitment. Let's talk about community design and management.
Yeah.
There's a saying I like to say about community, which is if you build it, they will not come. It's not about getting a community software like I signed up for a Facebook group, or I have installed the Lifter LMS social learning plugin. I now have a community. It's true you do, but you built the house or you've scheduled the thing, but are people going to show up? Are they going to keep showing up? I think of it as like holding space. Like you really have to, this becomes a part of your life. You have to lead it. You got to make the space for it. You got to protect it. And in terms of leadership, what I mean by that is this is one of those lead by example things. You got to like post useful content. You have to like actually be social. You have to like help and like highlight the people that are really outstanding in your community. If, like a spammer comes in or somebody's behaving inappropriately, you have to kick them out. You have to protect the community. And I think it's also cool to be human in community. Like it may be like a professional, business related community, or athletic advice or health related advice community, but let a little bit of the humanity in. Sometimes you'll see community members support each other. Like if something bad happens, or they might celebrate a birthday, even though they've never met in person or anything like that. And in terms of community design and management, I'll talk about Dan Martell's SaaS Academy community, which was really well done. He had a Facebook group. This was a 2-year program I was in for software founders. And, there was courses and content and stuff, but there were also, the Facebook group was very active. And like you said, Jason, Dan was very involved. He was in there. He was posting content. He was answering people's questions. He was doing that humble thing where, like, you know what, we have this community member who's really the best at subject matter X. Tag that person. I think he called that signposting, and it was a great experience. And then the in-person events he ran at big cities around the United States and Canada 3 times a year. We would fly out to that, stay in a hotel together. The actual conference room had round tables, not just like chairs in a, auditorium style. And he would intentionally design, or he and his team design, like who sat with who for all 3 days. So he's trying to help develop relationships, like this person needs to meet this person. This person is at a similar revenue stage. This person is really good at marketing. This person's really good at product. This person's, really good at sales or whatever. And his table groups were like awesome. And I just remember being like, wow, I had that experience of finding the others. And he had scaled his company, beyond his size. And he had a great team that was very much involved, like doing these duties of community design and management. Ultimately, he brought in, it wasn't just him talking from the stage. He had like a top expert about pricing who we've both studied, Marcos Rivera. That's how I met Marcos. And like, he's one of the top software pricing experts in the world. So Dan guided us to Marcos and like held the space for that, knowledge transfer to happen.
Some of the key themes are like being intentional about it, being committed, continuously working on it. I liked how you pointed out being human in the community, and especially for those like online, versions of community where, it's hard to remember that, or you feel like you're interacting or in a certain way. But just remembering there's a human on the other side of the screen will give you like the grace to work in moments, allow them to have mistakes, and kind of get closer. I mentioned how it's like these people, if you interact with them enough, they become your friends. Like we live like quite a bit of our life online. And I don't know, probably a few people like that. They're just like, oh, you're friends with them? Yeah. Hey, when was the last time you saw them? I've never seen this person in my whole life. They have a frog avatar and I don't even know what they look like or whatever. But yeah, like, that's a core value of ours about being human that helps guide things. Yeah. And maybe, so something I'd like to talk about around designing your community, because I've seen folks struggle with it, is to make sure that you have a concentration of your discussion, or put another way, like don't dilute the discussion. And what I mean by that is like minimize the different channels or categories or forums, like until absolutely necessary. So if you're familiar with like a forum that can have multiple sub forums, or Slack has multiple channels, or, if you're using a posting mechanism and you have different categories, what I would recommend is start with one channel or as few as possible. And it's okay if it's noisy. You want it to feel like there's a lot of people here. It's bumping. There's a lot going on. If you spread that out across a bunch of categories too early, it becomes like the wild, wild west. And like, I see like little, dust balls flying by it's like, where are we? And you also, so if you have too many categories spread out too thin too, it confuses people about where to post. They're like, I have an idea, but I don't know if that should be in general discussion or special discussion, or, news. Is that news or is it discussion? I'm not sure. So let the new channels and forums or categories like come up organically. Like if it's noisy in that channel and there's one channel where everyone's talking, you'll start, oh, there's a common thing every day, or these people like to talk about this. We need a special, place just for this kind of conversation. And because you want to avoid what's called like the paralysis of choice when you're posting. I mentioned there's too many options. You don't know where to put something. Another part of like channel category design that can throw people off is if you use kind of like jokey, clever names. And we used to call this like a web design. If your menu was like mystery meat, you remember that term? Everyone wanted to say like, what is this called? This is called like Jason's Garden. And you're like, it's your about page. People know these things are called about pages. Just say about, and that's what the title of the link should be. It's the same thing when you're, labeling your categories and channels. You want to use descriptive names that explain, what kind of conversation goes there, and have like a sticky post or some kind of note that's like, this is what talks here, and lightly police it. If you have a support channel or like a development channel, like, and people start talking about development, and you just quietly nudge them like, hey, you should talk over here. Minimize the in-jokes. You talked about how there's kind of like these like PhD level, after a while, experts who are in your forum, they've been there and they start building like a cabal, like this like force of nature. And there are different, those folks who've been on your forum for a while are like, they work in the forums in a different way, and they have these like in-jokes that develop. And that can be a source of community, but you want to be conscious of like when new folks get onboarded, that they don't just get hurled into this, maybe even just have a one pager. Here's all the jokes and terms, but avoid naming your categories after those things. And I guess like a personal story to like nail that home is I'm part of a small investing group on a Slack. And I think there's like 6 folks in there right now, but there's 12 different channels. So it's only 6 people talking, but 12 channels. And a lot of them do have this kind of like mystery meat name. There's stuff like the CFO's office, rat race, or big picture. And I'm often like sharing news about something. And I'm like, is this big picture news? Or like, it's kind of about my job because I found it while I was working, or I take the CFO role in my business. So maybe it's CFOs, like it's confusing where they go. And it's confusing then even just literally the user experience of using the Slack app. I get a notification. I'm like, that looks interesting. And if I click on it and Slack kind of breaks, it doesn't take me to it. Then I go into the root of the forum and I'm like, wait, I don't know which channel that would have been in. And yet, so like you want to minimize that kind of like hunting and pecking. And this is like a small group of people who know each other mostly offline anyway. And we're willing to put in the work to talk to each other. But if you're trying to build a community and charge for access and grow it, like this kind of friction is going to be counterproductive.
Yeah. And just another pro tip, like if you just do have one channel, like in Facebook as an example, you still just have one channel, but you can add a hashtag and you can train members like, oh, if this is like your wins post, put hashtag wins on it. Or when you start the thread, put the wins thread on it. So you can kind of create some filtering with hashtags. And another cool thing is some communities are more serious or focused than others. And one cool one that we do is called the water cooler. So for example, in Slack, whenever you start a Slack instance, it comes with a general channel and a random channel. So Slack knows this, that like these two will happen no matter what, likely. So
it's funny, when I said one channel, I was thinking the one channel and the water cooler general random channel. Yeah. It's so important.
If you're like kind of, if it's really serious, you want like the subject matter to really stay focused in the general channel, you can use that random channel or that water cooler as kind of the, not junk drawer, but like everything else over here or personal life over here. If you're like really on mission and you want to keep your main channel or main key channels really focused. Let's talk about online versus offline communities. In my opinion and experience as both a user or a member of communities and also a creator of communities, I think hybrid is the best, where you have some offline and some online. Now, it's really hard if you sell training courses and coaching all over the world to create an in-person event. But if you can, or at least do it in your home country, or if you're big enough in your own city or geographic region, I highly recommend it. One thing you can do to add an offline community if you're like small and you're not sure if you can pull it off, is you can actually tag on to an existing offline community that your people are already likely going to. There could be like a professional conference that happens for the industry that your people are in, or maybe it's a sporting event or something. So you can just like either right before, during, or after. It could be as small as like a 2-hour, let's meet up at this location, grab some drinks or some food, and, just get together and chat and meet each other in person. It can be that simple. So there's ways to kind of hack your way into the momentum of where these people are already hanging out. And that's why it's good to be clear on who your customer avatar is. And you can also test communities. So similar to marketing and, doing pre-selling and things like that, it's good to run some tests. So like you may think that your main community is in a Facebook group. Like that's pretty good guess, right? But there may be this other opportunity you don't know about, like, crypto people are on Discord a lot. Techie people typically are working in Slack for their company. So you could have just like another Slack group. They're already in Slack, so you're right there. There's all kinds of different ways to think about it. I do like the idea of staying focused, but it's good to test. And one way you can do it is just test yourself as an individual, join somebody else's community that has the same avatar, see how active it is over there. And sometimes you will find like, oh wait, I could have two communities, or maybe my community's migrating over here to this platform. I might want to try that. I might want to try having it on my website and see if I can make it work. So it's okay to do some tests, but I definitely recommend not just finding as many community platforms as you can and starting them all at once. Is too much to manage. It's also not the end of the world to like shut down one with heads up, like, hey, this community is moving here. You mentioned earlier you were on a forum and you, I think, shut that down and moved over here. We actually started at Lifter LMS with a BB Press forum as well. Decided that it was better, through a support ticket system and our live calls and things like that, our office hours. But I want to tell a story about the Lifter LMS community. Like our main original customer avatar is the DIY course creator, coach, subject matter expert that's trying to wear all these 5 hats we're talking about in this training. But what I noticed is no matter what I did, this other avatar was always here, which is I build websites for clients, the WordPress professional, the agency. And then within that avatar is also on Facebook. But within that, the people that were more engineering developer focused, they did not like Facebook. They weren't that engaged with it. So what we ended up doing was testing out a Slack channel, a developer community on Slack for Lifter LMS. And then that became like the developer spot. And like the conversations are so different what's happening over in the developers versus in the Facebook community. And to your point earlier about, marketing isn't always the best to facilitate, the product side of community. What ends up happening is like kind of the marketing folks are kind of better with the Facebook side, but the actual Lifter LMS engineers, the developers, are engaging more in the developer community. So it's interesting how you get, you can try to control community, but it's also just going to happen. Like you mentioned, there was a community about your product, a Facebook group that you or none of your team were even in, and you found it, and then you joined the community about your product.
It was kind of funny. We're like, this is cool. Can we join? Yeah, that was pretty awesome to like discover. It made me feel good. It was like, wow, there's like hundreds of people working on this thing. And I still don't know what the status is of that. We're kind of competing with them, but they're on Facebook. We're on Slack. One thing I liked about your, like the Lifter LMS developers community is it had like a test or like a form you had to fill out to get in.
Yeah.
And like Discord does this really well. They have these tools to build these like checkbox mazes you have to go through to make sure you get in. And Facebook groups will have questionnaires you have to fill out, an application process. I know Paid Memberships Pros directory, or we have like an approvals plugin, and there's ways to do that. That's an interesting tool, and especially for these like online offline community hybrids where and we've seen some crazy ones like you have to like live in one of these like 12 houses to be in the community. So you had to like prove you live there. We were like talking with someone over like the technical challenges of that. Yeah, it's like, I find like the honor system goes a long way of like just you can ask people. We have like an alumni association Facebook group. And one of the questions is like, what year did you graduate? And people like don't answer, or they don't, it's like it's very easy to make something up, just pick a random year. But people don't do it. And then you're like, you can filter on that. Like they definitely are alumni if they don't remember what year they graduated from or chose not to fill it out. It was like an automatic spammer or something. And so, yeah, and that's good enough. And then you police it retroactively if people come in and they're not actually like for these, I've seen lots of these communities that are focused on like a physical space or like the, mountain association or homeowners association or something like that. And you want to make sure, or even professional associations have applications like, are you actually a nurse? Are you actually a police officer? Another thing that comes up in my communication with these kinds of offline communities that are coming online for the first time, and I thought we could chat about it a bit, is I remember having customer interviews with a bunch of these, and this same conversation kept coming up where they would say, what I really want is a place for my members to be able to collaborate. And I'd be like, oh, cool. Like collaborate on what? And they often like couldn't really answer. They're like, oh no, just like collaborate. I was like, what does that mean? And I think a lot of times, back then, like I have a guess, but I was like, I really don't know. A lot of people talk about collaboration, and it depends on the context of the organization. But I'm like, I think I don't know what it means. Or is it like this weird buzzword that people feel like they have to have? But one thing I do realize is it's a kind of, a lot of them were part of an association where there's one person who does all the work. There, it's like a nature preserve, and there's people have membership, and some people donate, and some people are members because they bought a brick on the path or something. But there's really one person who organizes and maintains it all and does all the work. And maybe what they mean by collaborate is like get more people to help out here. And I was like, and I don't actually have the answer for that. I was like, I don't know how to have technology force people to like participate more. Or that's like a really tough question. I don't know if you have no tools about that. And the other thing I could come up with then briefly is like in like a board situation, that same kind of thing that comes up sometimes. One person is handling the technology, and like they want to talk with each other about things. And that's almost like, oh, I want to train them on how to use Google Meet to like, or like a kind of web conferencing software to talk online, and how to use Google Docs or some other system to kind of keep track of notes. So these are maybe like ideas for how to like productize that like within our scope for some of our customers but I was curious, like if that came up with you, like what do folks mean by collaborate? It seems like this fuzzy term people use, and these challenges of like offline communities, like trying to get more participation and like collaborate through online communication.
It can be unhealthy when the idea of collaboration is like, I want more people to work for free for me.
Yeah.
And I think this comes to like that holding space and leading the community, setting expectations around, all right, I want you're here, you can ask for help, but for every ask, try to help 3 people or just try to help one-on-one, like even the balance in the universe.
Yeah.
So it doesn't become like a platform for where everybody's just trying to take, because then it's not a healthy community.
Yeah. Do you remember like early IRC forums and you would like share files? It was like you were a leech and you had to like upload so many files before you could take. I've seen that. And I've definitely seen in codes of conduct for communities, they talk specifically about like how to give back and giving back in certain ways or helping out. If you've been here a while, help out the new folks, make sure you do that. Like they encourage it.
Yeah. And it's some like Reddit, I believe you can't do a post until you've commented a bunch of times. So they're like kind of getting you to, help or contribute before posting your own thing. Let's talk about other people's communities. If you're a subject matter expert, yeah, you're trying to build a thing, but you're likely not in a vacuum. There's existing other communities around your idea, either very closely or tangentially related, like communities of where people are before they're ready for your community or where they might go after. So there's this idea, like in marketing as an example, where you can leverage other people's audiences. And so that means like, even if you have like 0 email list, as an example, you can, go to somebody who does have a big email list, create like a training or free resource, and you kind of take their stage and contribute to their community and maybe get some people over to your community or your offer. The way I think about this is just the general idea of being a helper, give before you get. So for example, even in the Lifter LMS space, I'd be in like a general, let's say, WordPress community, and someone's literally having trouble with one of my competitor softwares. And the question they're asking is not like exactly about their software, but I'm like, okay, this is a website that a competitor has, but I actually know the answer to what this person is asking, like, where should I host my videos or whatever. I'm still going to help them. So giving with no expectation of return is super powerful. Joint venture partnerships are a really interesting one. And I'll tell a story about that in a second. But what a joint venture partnership is in a perfect world is you have an audience or community, this other person have an audience and community. They may be exactly the same or similar, or overlapping. And it's like an exchange, like, okay, I'll do a webinar for your community. You do a webinar for my community. We'll both email our lists. We'll invite the people in, and there can be an offer at the end of the webinar to get the free thing or sign up for the paid thing. And those can work really well. So an example that I do at Lifter LMS, there's like the two audiences of like the course creator and like kind of the website building professional. There's some people that I do joint venture partnerships with that have like really just the course creator. They're not like techies at all. And I have a bunch of techies that, but also course creators. So our products are not in competition. This person is selling coaching and courses and stuff. I'm more on the software side, but we have a lot of overlap in your audience. So once a year, we basically do an email exchange, an email to whatever the main offer is, and something like that. And this person I've met with, I've gone offline and I've been to their house in your home. I've been to mastermind events that they've put on, and we just developed a partnership. We've become friends, but we ask each other for just business help from time to time. And we have this kind of business relationship where we just do this exchange once a year. And I've probably done that for 6 or 7 years at this point. So that's a joint venture partnership. Then there's affiliate partnerships, which are a little more straightforward in the sense that you can set up an affiliate program where somebody promotes your course or your membership. They get a unique link that's trackable, and there's automated systems for handling this. So they can promote your program to their community. The affiliate system measures and tracks that link click. And if ultimately within like 30 days or whatever, that person ends up buying something, that person earns an affiliate commission, which in the course space is typically anywhere from 15 to 50% of the transaction amount. So that's a way if you introduce an affiliate program to your online education platform, it's a way for other people to essentially sell for you to their audience. A collaboration point story with Lifter LMS. but around the same time as we introduced our Facebook group, there was another popular software called WP Fusion, which connects your website with Lifter on it and other popular software to CRM companies like Salesforce, HubSpot, ActiveCampaign, ConvertKit, and so on. And we've integrated our softwares together. They work really well together. I help out in the WP Fusion Facebook group. Jack, the founder of WP Fusion, whenever somebody has like a marketing automation question or whatever, he comes over to our Facebook group. He helps out. So it's just like this partnership where we're leveraging each other's community, but it's a triple win. It's good for, me, it's good for Jack, and most importantly, it's good for the user. They're getting the help from that outside expert, and the outside expert is also now getting exposure, potentially new customers. We recommend each other's software. We both use each other's software. It's just a strong partnership where two communities are working for the benefit of all.
So many good options there for how to think about these other communities. And you talked about adjacent communities that come before or after in the journey. And I think that like a phrase is like, what's next is this one that can be used in a sense of, if someone takes a course and at the end of it, they're finished and you don't have a community, if you don't have your own what's next, it's like, what's next? Maybe you pass it off to another community and you become an affiliate of theirs. Or you give someone sales leads for an even bigger course. Or you could be on the other end of it where you reach out to some of these other products and communities that have that kind of what's next moment. Like they finish this thing, they graduate from that, but that person doesn't serve that user anymore or have an upsell. And you're like, but you do. So it's a good way to, through these affiliate relationships, cross-pollinate between products and communities. Yeah. I'm thinking about, interacting with communities like Reddit, in the subreddits, in social media and places, or if you're in someone else's Facebook group and you gave some of the, polite ideas around how you should interact there. Like you should be helpful. You shouldn't, always be promoting. You help people even if they're your competitors. Another one, like a way to think about it when you're interacting in these communities online is to be yourself and very clearly make it clear like who you are. I think there can be a temptation, for example, when you're on a subreddit and someone says, what's the best LMS, to almost like, and you're like, I have one, to just like almost pretend you're someone else or just answer and not be clear that you're the owner of the product that you just linked to. Because that feels potentially more authentic to the moment, or it's like awkward to out yourself. But I think that's troublesome if you don't declare your biases and aren't clear about who you are. These like internet sleuths will go through your history and be like, wait a second, this is Chris Badgett. He owns and they'll think you're up to shady stuff, even if you just felt a little awkward. You don't want to make it awkward. You just had a good answer for someone. So it's almost like, be a little obnoxious about it. Like, I have a bias because I'm Jason Coleman, the owner of this thing, but we have a really good product that answers that, or a really good blog post that answers this question. And even on some sites, like if they allow it in a signature or some point, like put it in the footer, or use your real name, stuff like that. And declare that you're biased about how you're responding. And I think people appreciate, like on something on like Reddit where you can upvote and downvote. I'm always worried when I do this. It's like, all right, I'm biased because I own this thing, but we have a really good solution. Here's how it works. And I think I'm worried people would downvote it because like, yeah, you can't trust that. Like there's this like in some of these forums, like Reddit knows the bias is there and they're sensitive to it. And they don't want to talk to you. They want to talk to other people. But if you're there and you're like, hey, I'm biased, but and you're just useful, I'm surprised you don't get as many downvotes, and people who know about your product might upvote it. So people respect the honesty. So like another case of this is Paid Memberships Pro. We have a bunch of free open source plugins, and a lot of them were hosted on WordPress.org. And WordPress.org had their own support form system, and we had ours. And this has always kind of been a little bit of a challenge because you if you don't support people in WordPress.org, it actually affects like your ranking, your search ranking. And there's no way to disable it or just say, we don't support it here, we support it over here. They're like, hey, if you host on WordPress.org, you have to support on our system too. So actually, there's a support forum, and I would pay people to monitor that and answer questions. But it's still, from time to time, this happened at least a couple times, someone would give us a negative review, either on WordPress.org itself or even on like a third-party type review site. And they'd be like, Paid Memberships Pro charges for support, and they wouldn't answer my question. But I went to WordPress, and WordPress answered my question. And I'm like, oh, like WordPress didn't answer your question. Like, I paid someone to answer your question. Like, that person works for me. That person is part of, is part of Paid Memberships Pro. And it just wasn't clear because it's called WordPress.org, the website, the big WordPress logo everywhere. And folks who, beginner's mindset, they're interacting with it, they're confused about how they're getting support. So all they saw was, when you go to /support at Paid Memberships Pro, we offer paid support. And now that forced us, that feedback, to like, we should more prominently focus on our free support. And especially now that we've moved outside the .org repo, we have to make our free support more prominent so we don't lose people who just think you have to pay. But what we did, so that's one thing we did was like, hey, made our own free support through our email and contact forms more clear. But we also on WordPress.org would put in our signature every time we help someone, Jason Coleman, owner of Paid Memberships Pro, or your title at Paid Memberships Pro, to try to make it a little more clear, like, hey, this is a Paid Memberships Pro person interacting with you. There's so many benefits to just like actually being yourself and being clear about who you are and being one human being per account, rather than kind of playing games and trying to, be a character or pretend you're someone you're not.
And that completes our session on community. And if you enjoyed this, I just want to say I've really enjoyed this conversation, Jason. And this has been a great conversation around community. I'd encourage anybody who listens to this to think about all the 5 hats, in addition to the community hat: the expert, the entrepreneur, the technologist, the teacher, and the community builder. And if you're really into this stuff, you're not alone. So in many ways, Jason and I are really into this stuff. We've been in it for over a decade, and finding the others, like we found each other through the internet. So if this is your niche, and you're feeling the vibe from of this community, you're not alone. I just want anybody who hears this conversation to really think about that. And Jason, I appreciate the great discussion we've had.
Awesome.